Here we are at the Annotated Urinary Lecture 3. We're going to dive right down into the glomerulus and now see how things work, okay? So, blood enters the capsule under pressure. Remember the glomerular capsule, the corpuscle composed of the capsule and the glomerulus. You can see the capsular space. So remember the afferent arteriole is bigger in diameter than the efferent. So that means more blood is trying to come in than is allowed to go out. Some of that pressure is taken off, of course, by forcing the filtrate into the proximal convoluted tubule. But nonetheless, we have very high pressure here inside of the glomerulus, and that forces things out of the blood. That literally just blows things out of the blood. So remember when we talked about capillaries, we had regular capillaries, then fenestrated, then sinusoidal. Remember, fenestra meant window in Latin, so these are capillaries with windows. And why do they have not windows like, the operating system? But they're not stuck with that. But they have windows. And remember where we found fenestrated capillaries? Places like the pancreas. Why? Because they have big windows to let like insulin in. So remember, endocrine glands are going to have fenestrated. And here in the kidney, we're going to have fenestrated because we want to let things out of the blood. All those waste products, we have to let them out. So we have big windows, all right? Allows almost all cells except blood cells to pass through. So red blood cells are way too big, and white blood cells and platelets. Then there are these filtration slits, which are part of the podocytes. The podocytes are the cells that form the visceral layer of the capsule, of the corpuscle. So blood cells and most proteins cannot pass through, but ions, glucose get through easily. And so the podocytes, by the way, are catching the proteins. The proteins are getting out. Because remember, like in endocrine glands, a lot of hormones are protein hormones, so they can get through the fenestra. So proteins will make it out, but then they get caught by those filtration slits from the podocytes. So isn't that clever? Like a two-layer filter there that lets out and keeps in exactly what you want. Let's take a look at glomerular filtration rate. So the rate at which we force blood through these capillaries of the glomerulus and create tubular fluid, filtrate. So when we look at the rate, we're talking about how much is formed per minute. Typical GFR for a male, 125 mils a minute, roughly maybe 4 shot glasses. 180 liters a day, so that's like 40 to 50 gallons, somewhere in there, okay? GFR for male, a little bit less. For both together, remember, you're a few shot glasses per minute, 150, 180 liters a day. You should really start thinking in terms of metric. I would want you to know those numbers. You could convert and realize it must be about 40 to 50 gallons. So of this stuff we forced out, 99% of it we're going to take back. Is that crazy or what? You might think, not very efficient, but that's the way your body does it. So all the stuff we force out into the capsular space there, into the tubular fluid, the filtrate, we're going to pull 99% of it back in. The stuff that continues through, we're going to make about 1 to 2 liters of urine a day and excrete it. So what happens if GFR is not going at the proper rate? What if we have too much GFR or not enough GFR? What's going to happen? Let's think it through. So if you have too much GFR, that means you're filtering too much. You're making too much filtrate. Therefore, your urine output rises. What's going to be the big deal? You're going to get dehydrated and you're going to be electrolyte depleted. So the urine has sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium. If you're peeing all the time, you're peeing out electrolytes as well. What if you don't have enough GFR? If you're not doing enough filtering, well, then you're going to not be able to get all the waste products out that you need to. All that urea, creatinine, and uric acid, it's not going to end up getting put in the filtrate. That means it's staying in the blood. So now our blood urea nitrogen is going to read way too high. We have azotemia, all right? GFR controlled by adjusting glomerular blood pressure. So remember, the afferent arteriole is wide, the efferent is narrow. That means more blood is trying to come in than can get out. So, but the precise amount, by adjusting the diameters of those arterioles, efferent and afferent, we'll be able to control the amount of blood trying to either enter or leave, and that will affect the pressure within the capsule. So 3 main ways to do this. Autoregulation means the capsule can regulate itself, right? The corpuscle can do self-regulation. The sympathetic nervous system can also override things and temporarily take control. And then hormonal mechanisms, particularly the Renin-Angiotensin-Aldosterone system, which you have to know. And this is why, because the RAA system, it's mostly centered in the kidney. I mean, we're in the very organ system where that is the big hormonal topic. So remember, GFR stands for Glomerular Filtration Rate. It is not Grand Funk Railroad, a bad band from the 70s, Galera, the Italian motorcycles, or it's not a gas-cooled fast reactor. So myogenic autoregulation, look at the word myogenic, created by muscles. So muscles right here in the capsule are going to take care of this. So the elasticity of the smooth muscle and the arterioles, all right, remember, smooth muscle, skeletal muscle, muscles have the property of both extensibility and elasticity. They stretch, but then they snap back. So the elasticity means that if you try to expand them, they will resist and try to keep snapping back. So they will respond to changes in blood pressure. If blood pressure goes up, then we will constrict the afferent arteriole and dilate the efferent. That means we'll let less blood in, and then we'll let more out. That's how we'll adjust for abnormally high blood pressure. See, abnormally high blood pressure would cause you to do way too much filtration. So how do we prevent that from happening? Let's constrict down those afferent arterioles. Let's open up those efferents. That allows blood to flow through faster, therefore we don't filter as much. It's not under as higher pressure, all right? High pressure would cause us to filter too much. And then what do we do for low blood pressure? Well, just the opposite. Try to bring even more blood in to get even more pressure into that glomerulus and let even less out. Again, that's going to cause more of a backup. It's going to raise pressure. So notice how right there in the blood vessels themselves, that smooth muscle can auto-respond and therefore control blood pressure to control the filtration rate. This is stable for a blood pressure range of 80 to 170 millimeters mercury for systolic. So remember, blood pressure, systolic over diastolic, the classic typical systolic is 120. So if you're, for whatever reason, you've got something happening to you, something affecting your blood pressure is crashing or it's going up too high, well, right here in the glomerulus, we can make adjustments all the way down to 80 and all the way up to 170. Beyond that, it's going to take more help. The glomerulus can't do it itself at that point, all right? Bottom right, you can see constriction and dilation of blood vessels. That's going to control the amount of blood, which is going to control the amount of pressure. Remember, blood pressure directly related to stroke volume. Cannot compensate for extreme. So if somebody else has to jump in if it's outside the range of 80 to 170, that's just an approximate. Different sources have different numbers, just about that, okay? Here you can see how controlling that afferent arteriole is going to control the flow of blood through the glomerulus, all right? You can read that over. It's very straightforward. So let's look at tubuloglomerular feedback control of glomerular filtration rate. Say that fast 3 times. Another local autoregulation mechanism of the GFR, all right? So here, macula densa cells. So remember, this is right here. Look on the far left of that diagram. See where it says, doesn't it say? I was hoping to identify the tube, but it doesn't. At least it does identify the macula densa cells, you can see, okay? That tube is right where the ascending nephron loop and the DCT come together. It's somewhere in there, all right? So, but the macula densa cells are sitting right there on the edge of the arterioles. They are monitoring the fluid, and in particular, they're monitoring sodium chloride. They're paying very special attention to sodium chloride levels. If they see high sodium chloride, that releases local vasoconstrictors, which will close down the afferent. That will decrease GFR because you're not letting as much blood in. If they see a decrease in sodium chloride, they inhibit the release of vasoconstrictors, therefore that raises GFR. So another cool little mechanism here, and what we'll see, or I really should have had it on this slide, the macula densa cells also cause the release of renin. So that's one of the control mechanisms. That's why when you look in the diagram on the left, it says juxtaglomerular apparatus. There are a whole bunch of things all working together here. So here, Negative feedback control. See? High GFR, well then rapid flow of filtrate renal tubules sensed by macula densa. Paracrine secretions, just little cell-to-cell messengers, cause constriction of the afferent arteriole that reduces GFR. Isn't that beautiful? There is a regulation of glomerular filtration rate. Okay, what's the approximate daily GFR? 1 to 2 gallons, 5 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, 40 to 50. You should know this. 40 to 50. Kidney, hard-working organ, doing a heck of a job down there for you. Thank it on National Kidney Day. Make sure to say thanks. Is there a National Kidney Day? I don't know. There should be. Let's make one. Let's start a petition. Okay, sympathetic nervous system. So we looked at local autoregulation. Now, the sympathetic. Again, autonomic nervous system controlling so many things in your body. Of course, sympathetic is going to have control over this as well. So strenuous exercise or acute conditions like circulatory shock stimulate the afferent arterioles to constrict. What's going to happen if we constrict the afferents? That means not as much blood is going to flow into the glomerulus. You're thinking, wait, what? Why? Why would we do that? Well, because if we're strenuously exercising or if we're in acute conditions like circulatory shock, that means we need blood out in the body to maintain our blood pressure. We don't need to be filtering a lot of blood right now to remove waste products. And that's why sympathetic nervous system decreases urination. Can you see why now? I made you learn that many, many months ago. Now we can really see why. Sympathetic nervous system decreases the GFR, therefore that decreases amount of urination. Low GFR and urine production redirecting blood flow to the heart, brain, and skeletal muscles. That's what I was saying. We don't need to filter right now. We need to get it to the heart, to the brain. We need to stay alive. Sympathetic crisis. It's the chupacabra. GFR can drop as low as a few millimeters per minute. You're barely filtering anything at that point, all right? So exercise. Poor man's plastic surgery. There you go. That's the truth, kids. So here we are, the Renin-Angiotensin-Aldosterone system. I've got my whiteboard on the way. I'm going to try to do a little presentation on the whiteboard of that one. So let's just trudge through this here in the slide. Angiotensin, remember, is a plasma protein manufactured in your liver. Right? It's one of the 300 plus plasma proteins made by the liver, which is why it gets all that good, rich nutrient blood through the hepatic portal vein. Angiotensin is zymogen made by the liver in your blood right now, but not doing anything. If there's a drop in blood pressure, it stimulates JG cells, juxtaglomerular. Now, those were in the anatomy PowerPoint, but I don't think I mentioned them in here yet. So go back and look there. It's the JG cells, the juxtaglomerular, that actually release the renin. And notice they release it in response to a drop in blood pressure. So what does renin do? Renin converts angiotensinogen into AT1, angiotensin 1. Now, what does AT1 do? Practically nothing. It's just an intermediate, okay? When it travels through the lungs, there is an enzyme there called ACE, angiotensin converting enzyme. And ACE converts AT1 to AT2. Now, a couple things about ACE. For one thing here, ACE is a major target of blood pressure medications, all right? Think about it. I want you to try to think that through. If you affect ACE, what are you going to do? It's ultimately going to affect blood pressure. So ACE drugs are very popular as blood pressure drugs, okay? Now then, AT2 is a powerful vasoconstrictor with multiple effects. And the other thing I wanted to say about AT2, actually about ACE, is that there's also an enzyme called ACE2. And remember, these are in-place enzymes in lung cells. And apparently ACE2 is one of the entry points for the coronavirus. That's why they have experimented with things that will inhibit the ACE2 enzyme from working. So AT2, powerful vasoconstrictor, many effects. Let's see what it does. Constricts both afferent and efferent arterioles, which reduces GFR. Again, so here you go. Renin, released as a hormone, a sympathetic type response to drop in blood pressure. We're going to constrict both afferent and efferent. Therefore, we're not going to be filtering hardly anything right now. We're going to stimulate sodium chloride and water reabsorption in the PCT. Okay? Remember the factors that affect blood pressure, stroke volume, all right? So what do we do here? Well, let's pull sodium chloride from the filtrate back into the blood, okay? That's why we were calling it filtrate. We didn't call it urine, because we're still moving things around. When it's in the tubules, it's still filtrate, and here we are, we're going to go ahead and modify it. We're going to pull sodium chloride in using a pump. And remember, what did we say about water and solutes? Water follows solutes. So therefore, as the NaCl gets pulled in here in the PCT, it's going to pull water with it. Therefore, stroke volume goes up. Therefore, blood pressure goes up. Remember, the whole deal here, this whole system sprung into action in response to a drop in blood pressure. So already, by pulling sodium chloride in, water comes with it, raises stroke volume, raises mean arterial blood pressure. Then it stimulates the adrenal cortex. So in the adrenal gland, we have both a cortex and a medulla. The cortex, which we're going to learn about more in the endocrine system when we get there, will release a hormone called aldosterone. And aldosterone, always remember, this is the save sodium hormone. Aldosterone saves sodium. So this is the one then that is going to promote the retention of sodium. Water will follow along with it. And now we've got an increase in stroke volume and an increase in blood pressure. So stimulates the pituitary to secrete antidiuretic hormone, ADH, which promotes water reabsorption. So ADH, as we'll see coming up later, works in the tubules to get water back in. Once again, more water, higher stroke volume, higher mean arterial blood pressure. Also stimulates the hypothalamus to make you feel thirsty. So that will once again increase stroke volume, increase blood pressure. All of those function to raise blood pressure. So you had to know this for exam 1. You now have to know it again. And I'll try to do a little whiteboard thing when the whiteboard comes. But this is really an easy system and it all fits together. But again, there are lots of drugs that work on ACE. There are drugs that work on aldosterone. There are drugs that work on angiotensin itself. There are drugs that work on all parts of this. So that's why it's such a big deal. And healthcare is huge because so many drugs affect this system. There you go, nice little cool sum. You can either go for the curvy line diagram or the straight line diagram. Depends on whether you're curvy or whether you're straight, I guess. I don't know. You decide. Another one. Ooh, it's got lots of colors here. Ooh, cool blue dotted arrows. God, that's sexy. But another one just tries to show what's going on. Okay? And, yeah. Oh my God. I'm standing on Canal Point. That's Pugwash Point, darkened in the immediate foreground on the right. And then in the distance, all lit up is Mount Saniela. This is right around, it's about 4:50 a.m. I always wake up early when I'm at Canal Point because I know things like this happen. Isn't that just the cat's ass in the moonlight? Oh my God, look at that. Seems like it's something out of a fairy tale, or like there should be a big dragon there or something, or, platoons of troops with shields and helmets.